My name is Marcus Webb, and I've been a radio operator with the 82nd Airborne Division since D-Day. It's March 1945 now, and we're pushing deep into Germany, chasing what's left of the Wehrmacht as they retreat toward Berlin. I've been operating a SCR-300 radio set for 8 months, transmitting coordinates, relaying orders, listening to desperate voices crackling through the static. I thought I'd become numb to it all. The mud, the cold, the bodies we pass without looking too close. But what I found in that burned-out trench near Remagen, just west of the Rhine, changed everything. It was March 15, 1945. We'd just secured a sector that the Germans had abandoned 2 days earlier. They'd burned everything before pulling out, documents, supplies, anything that could help us. The trenches were blackened, still smoking in places, filled with the acrid smell of scorched wood and petrol. Webb, check that communications dugout for anything salvageable. Sergeant Frank Holloway barked from behind me, his Thompson slung over his shoulder. Yes, Sergeant. I called back, adjusting the weight of my field pack. The dugout was partially collapsed, the timber supports charred and splintered. I crouched low and crawled inside, my flashlight cutting through the darkness. Broken German radio equipment littered the floor, a torn .Fu.D2 set, shattered vacuum tubes, melted wiring. Then I saw it. Wedged between 2 sandbags, protected from the fire by some miracle, a leather satchel, British Army issue. Inside was a small oilskin pouch, and inside that, a letter. My hand shook as I opened it. The handwriting was hurried but clear. A woman's hand. The letter read, "To whoever finds this. My name is Lieutenant Eleanor Ashford, Signals Officer, British 6th Airborne Division. If you're reading this, I'm likely dead or captured. I need you to do something for me. It's not an order, I have no authority over you now. It's a plea. 17 kilometers southeast of here, in a village called Reinbach, there's a family hiding in a cellar beneath the old church, Anna Weber, a schoolteacher, and her 3 children, Johann, 9, Greta, 7, and little Klaus, 4. Their father was executed by the SS for hiding Allied pilots. Anna helped me when I was separated from my unit. She saved my life. Now she's in danger. The Gestapo knows. They're coming for her. There's a name at the bottom of this letter, Captain Thomas Harding, American 1st Army Intelligence. He has contacts with the French resistance. He can get them out. Please find him. Tell him Eleanor sent you. I made a promise to those children. Don't let my death make me a liar. Lieutenant Eleanor Ashford. March 12, 1945 inch. I sat there in the darkness, the letter trembling in my hands. 3 days. She'd written this 3 days ago. Webb. You find anything? Holloway's voice echoed from above. I quickly folded the letter and tucked it into my jacket pocket, beneath my wool shirt. Nothing useful, Sarge. Just fried German equipment. As I climbed out of the dugout, I felt the weight of that letter against my chest. Don't let my death make me a liar. I didn't know Lieutenant Eleanor Ashford. I didn't know if she was lying in a ditch somewhere or in a German POW camp. But those words, those children, they were real. That night, we bivouacked in a half-destroyed farmhouse 3 miles from the Rhine. The rest of my squad, Corporal Danny Jensen, Private Roy Carter, and Private First Class Mike Sullivan, sat around a small fire, heating cans of rations and swapping stories about home. Hey Webb, you're quiet tonight, Danny said, offering me a cigarette. You sick or something? Nah, just tired, I lied, waving off the smoke. I waited until everyone was asleep before pulling out the letter again. By the light of my oil lamp, I studied every word. At the bottom, beneath Eleanor's signature, was a note. Contact, Captain T. Harding, 1st Army HQ, Remagen. Field telephone extension 447. Remagen. We were less than 10 miles from there. I thought about my own family back in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, my mother working night shifts at the steel mill, my kid brother Paulie who wanted to enlist the day he turned 18, My father who died in the First War and never came home. If I were Eleanor Ashford, wouldn't I want someone to finish what I'd started? The question haunted me all night. By dawn, I'd made my decision. I had to find Captain Harding. I had to find out what happened to Eleanor. And if she was gone, if those kids were still alive, I had to get them out. Even if it meant going AWOL. Even if it cost me everything. I didn't sleep that night. Not really. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those names written in Eleanor Ashford's careful handwriting: Anna, Johann, Greta, Klaus. By 0600 hours, the squad was up and moving. We had orders to advance toward Bonn and set up communications for the artillery units crossing the Rhine. Standard work for a radio operator: haul the equipment, establish contact, relay coordinates, repeat. But my mind was 17 kilometers southeast, in a village I'd never seen, with a family I'd never met. "Webb, you with us?" Corporal Danny Jensen nudged my shoulder as we marched. He was from Brooklyn, with a thick accent and a quick smile that made everyone feel at ease. "You've been staring at nothing for the last mile." "Yeah, I'm here," I muttered, adjusting the SCR 300 strapped to my back. 40 pounds of radio equipment that suddenly felt like nothing compared to the weight of that letter in my pocket. "Good, 'cause Holloway's been eyeing you like you're about to bolt." I glanced ahead. Sergeant Holloway was watching me, his jaw set tight beneath his helmet. He'd been in this war since North Africa. He could read soldiers like open books. We reached the outskirts of Remagen by midday. The famous Ludendorff Bridge loomed ahead, partially collapsed but still standing, a miracle of engineering and luck. American troops and trucks streamed across it like ants, ferrying supplies and reinforcements into Germany's heartland. "All right, listen up." Holloway gathered us near a supply depot. "We're setting up communications in Sector Baker 7. Webb, you're with me. The rest of you, help unload those trucks." This was my chance. "Sergeant," I said, keeping my voice steady, "I need to report to 1st Army HQ. There's a communication protocol issue I need to verify." Holloway's eyes narrowed. "A protocol issue? Since when do you verify protocols, Webb?" "Since I found British equipment in that German dugout yesterday, Sarge. Might be important for intelligence." It wasn't entirely a lie. There was British equipment. And it was important. Holloway studied me for a long moment. Finally, he jerked his head toward the bridge. "Fine. You've got 2 hours. Miss the truck convoy to Bonn, and you're walking. Clear?" "Crystal, Sarge." 1st Army headquarters was chaos. Officers shouted orders, clerks rushed between tents with stacks of papers, and the constant rumble of artillery echoed from across the river. I weaved through the crowd, asking directions until I found the intelligence section, a large canvas tent with armed guards at the entrance. "State your business," a young MP said, blocking my path. He couldn't have been older than 19. "Private Marcus Webb, 82nd Airborne. I need to speak with Captain Thomas Harding." "It's urgent." "Captain Harding doesn't take walk-ins, Private." "File a report in." "It's about Lieutenant Eleanor Ashford," I interrupted, pulling out the letter just enough for him to see the British insignia on the oilskin pouch. "British 6th Airborne. She sent me." The MP's expression changed. He glanced at his partner, then back at me. "Wait here." 5 minutes felt like 5 hours. Soldiers passed by, trucks rumbled, somewhere a radio crackled with German voices, intercepted communications. Finally, the MP returned. "Come with me." Captain Thomas Harding was not what I expected. I'd pictured some gruff, battle-hardened officer with medals and scars. Instead, I found a lean man in his early 30s, sitting behind a folding table covered in maps and intelligence reports. His uniform was clean but worn, his eyes sharp and calculating behind wire-rimmed glasses. "Private Webb," he said, not looking up from a document. "You mentioned Eleanor Ashford." "Yes, sir." I stepped forward and placed the letter on his desk. I found this in a German dugout near here, 3 days after it was written. I think she might be dead, sir. Harding's hand stopped mid-motion. He picked up the letter slowly, unfolded it, and read. The room went silent except for the distant rumble of trucks. When he finished, he set the letter down and removed his glasses, pinching the bridge of his nose. God damn it, he whispered. Sir? He looked up at me, and for the first time, I saw something raw in his eyes. Grief. Anger. Eleanor Ashford was one of the best signals officers the British had. She was also a friend. I've been trying to find her for 4 days. What happened? Harding stood and walked to a map pinned to a board. He pointed to an area southeast of Remagen. She was part of a joint operation, British and American forces trying to establish radio contact with partisan cells in the Rhineland. Her unit was ambushed by an SS patrol near Meckenheim on March 11th. Most of her squad made it out. She didn't. My stomach sank. So she's dead. Confirmed by a scout yesterday. She's buried in a field hospital cemetery 10 miles from here. He turned back to me, his voice hard. Which means the family she mentions, Anna Weber and her children, are still in danger. Can you get them out, sir? Harding laughed bitterly. Get them out? Private, do you have any idea what you're asking? Rheinbach is still contested territory. The Germans are retreating, but they're not gone. The SS is executing traitors left and right. If I send a team in there and it goes sideways, that's not just 4 civilians dead, it's American soldiers. But Eleanor Ashford died trying to save them. And that's tragic, Harding snapped. But I can't authorize a rescue mission based on a promise a dead officer made. I have orders. Priorities. A goddamn war to win. I stood there, feeling the weight of his words. He was right. Logically, tactically, he was right. But Eleanor Ashford's words echoed in my mind, don't let my death make me a liar. Sir, I said quietly. What if I went? Harding blinked. Excuse me? What if I went to Rheinbach? Off the books. No official mission, no risk to your command. Just me. You're a radio operator, Webb. Not infantry. Not reconnaissance. You'd be walking into enemy territory with no backup, no extraction plan. I can handle myself, sir. Can you? Harding leaned forward, his voice cutting. Can you shoot a man in the face? Can you navigate hostile terrain? Can you convince a terrified mother to trust a stranger with her children's lives? I met his gaze. I can try, sir. Because if I don't, no one will. Silence. Harding sat back down, rubbing his temples. For a moment, I thought he'd have me thrown out, or worse, arrested for insubordination. Then he opened a drawer and pulled out a folded map and a small compass. You didn't hear this from me, he said, sliding them across the table. Rheinbach is here. The church is in the center of town, stone building with a bell tower, hard to miss. There's a cellar entrance on the north side. If Anna Weber is still alive, that's where she'll be. He reached into another drawer and pulled out a set of civilian identification papers, forged, by the look of them. These might help if you get stopped. You speak any German? A little, sir. Enough to get by. Then you'll need to pass as a displaced worker heading east. Don't wear your uniform past the front lines. And for God's sake, don't get caught. I took the papers, my hands trembling slightly. What about getting them out once I find them? Harding pulled out a pencil and marked a spot on the map. There's a partisan safe house in Euskirchen, 12 kilometers west of Rheinbach. Contact name is Henri Moreau, French resistance, been operating behind German lines for months. He owes me a favor. Mention Eleanor's name. He'll know what to do. Thank you, sir. Don't thank me, Private. Harding's voice was cold now, distant. If you get caught, I never heard of you. If you die, you're just another casualty. And if you somehow pull this off. He paused, then added quietly, tell Anna Weber that Eleanor kept her promise. Even if it wasn't her who finished it. I left HQ with a map, fake papers, and a plan that felt more like suicide with every step. When I got back to the squad, Holloway was loading the last truck. Webb. Where the hell have you been? Sorry, Sarge. Took longer than I thought. He studied me suspiciously. You good? Yeah. I'm good. But I wasn't. Because that night, while my squad slept in a requisitioned barn outside Bonn, I'd be slipping away into the darkness. Heading southeast. Toward Rainback. Toward a promise a dead woman made. And toward whatever hell was waiting for me there. I left at 0230 hours, while the squad was deep in sleep. I'd stripped off my uniform and changed into civilian clothes I'd borrowed from a supply depot, worn trousers, a threadbare jacket, a wool cap pulled low over my eyes. My dog tag stayed behind, buried under my bunk. If I got caught, I couldn't be traced back to the 82nd Airborne. The only military equipment I kept was my M1911 pistol, tucked into my waistband beneath the jacket, and a combat knife strapped to my ankle. The fake papers Captain Harding gave me identified me as Wilhelm Fischer, a displaced factory worker from Dusseldorf trying to reach family in Bavaria. I prayed I wouldn't need to use them. The moon was a sliver that night, barely enough light to see by. I followed the map Harding had marked, moving through fields and tree lines, avoiding roads where German patrols might still be operating. The front lines were fluid here. Pockets of resistance, scattered Wehrmacht units trying to regroup, SS fanatics who'd rather die than surrender. Every shadow was a threat. Every sound made my hand drift toward the pistol. It took me 6 hours to cover the 17 kilometers to Rainback. By the time I reached the outskirts of the village, dawn was breaking, a cold, gray light that made everything look dead. Rainback was small, maybe 200 buildings, clustered around a central square. Most of the houses were intact, but several showed signs of shelling. A burned-out German half-track sat abandoned near the entrance, its metal skeleton rusted and hollow. I moved carefully, keeping to the edges, watching for movement. The streets were empty. Too empty. Then I heard voices. German voices. I ducked behind a stone wall and peered around the corner. 3 Wehrmacht soldiers stood near a fountain in the square, smoking cigarettes and talking. They looked young, exhausted, their uniforms dirty and torn. Stragglers from a retreating unit, probably. The church was 200 meters beyond them, its stone bell tower rising above the rooftops like a gray sentinel. Think, Marcus. Think. I couldn't go around, the streets were too open. I couldn't wait, every minute increased the risk. So I did the only thing I could, I walked. Straight down the main street. Head down. Hands in pockets. Just another displaced civilian trying to survive. Hey! Duda! One of the soldiers called out. I kept walking. Halt! I stopped. Turned slowly. My heart hammered against my ribs. The soldier approached, his rifle slung casually over his shoulder. He was maybe 22, with a patchy beard and hollow eyes. Papier, he said tiredly. I pulled out the forged documents and handed them over, keeping my expression blank. He steadied them for a moment, squinting at the faded ink. Wilhelm Fischer. Dusseldorf. He looked up at me. Was Max Du here? Family, I said, my German rough but passable. Bayern. Gehe nach Hause. Family. Bavaria. Going home. He stared at me for a long moment. I could feel the weight of the pistol against my stomach, could see myself drawing it, shooting all 3 of them before they could react. Gay, he said, handing back the papers. Verschwind. Go. Get lost. I nodded and kept walking, forcing myself not to run. Behind me, I heard them laugh about something. Then silence. The church was old, Medieval maybe, with thick stone walls and narrow windows. The front doors were locked, but Harding had said the cellar entrance was on the north side. I circled around and found it, a wooden hatch set into the ground, half hidden by overgrown weeds. I knelt and knocked softly. Nothing. I knocked again, harder this time. Still nothing. Anna Weber, I whispered in English. My name is Marcus Webb. I'm American. Eleanor Ashford sent me. Silence. Then, a scraping sound. The hatch lifted slightly, and a pair of terrified eyes stared up at me from the darkness. "W.E.R. Bistu?" A woman's voice, trembling. "I'm a friend of Eleanor's," I said slowly. "Lieutenant Eleanor Ashford. British Army. She told me about you. About Johann, Greta, and Klaus. She wanted me to get you out." The eyes widened. "Eleanor." The hatch opened further, revealing a woman in her 30s with dark hair pulled back in a bun, her face gaunt and pale. "Is she?" "I'm sorry," I said quietly. "She didn't make it." Anna Weber's face crumpled, tears streaming down her cheeks. But she didn't sob, didn't cry out. She just closed her eyes and breathed, like she'd been expecting this. "Come down," she finally said. Quickly. The cellar was cramped and dark, lit only by a single candle. 3 children huddled on a makeshift bed of blankets, Johann, a boy with serious eyes and dirt-smudged cheeks, Greta, clutching a tattered doll, and Klaus, barely more than a toddler, asleep in Greta's arms. "Mama, W.E.R. ist das?" Johann asked, shrinking back. "It's all right," Anna said softly in German, then switched to broken English. "He is, friend. He will help us." I knelt down to their level, keeping my voice gentle. "My name is Marcus. I'm going to get you somewhere safe, okay? But we have to leave soon. Before the soldiers come back." "The Gestapo came yesterday," Anna said, her voice hollow. "They searched the houses. We hid here. They didn't find us. But they will come back. They always come back." "Then we leave now," I said, pulling out the map. "There's a safe house 12 kilometers west, in Euskirchen. A man named Henri Moreau. He'll take you to the Allied lines." Anna looked at her children, then back at me. "Can we trust you?" I thought about Eleanor Ashford's letter, about the promise she'd died trying to keep. "Yes," I said. "You can trust me." We left through the cellar hatch just as the sun fully rose. Anna carried Klaus, while Johann and Greta held onto her coat. I led the way, moving through back alleys and gardens, avoiding the main streets. We'd made it 3 blocks when I heard the engines. Trucks. Coming from the east. "Schnell!" I hissed, pulling them into a bombed-out building. We crouched behind a collapsed wall as 2 Wehrmacht trucks rolled past, followed by a black Kübelwagen, a German military vehicle. SS insignia on the door. Through a gap in the rubble, I saw an officer step out. Tall. Black uniform. Death's head on his cap. He barked orders in harsh German, and soldiers began spreading out, searching houses. "They're looking for us," Anna whispered, her voice shaking. I checked my pistol. 7 rounds. Against maybe 20 soldiers. "We need to move," I said. "Now." We slipped out the back and ran, not toward the west road, but north, into the forest that bordered the village. Branches whipped at our faces, roots tried to trip us, but we kept moving. Behind us, I heard shouting. They'd found the cellar. They knew we'd been there. "Halt! Stehen bleiben!" Gunfire cracked through the trees. Bark exploded beside my head. "Run!" I shouted, pushing Anna forward. "Don't stop." We ran for what felt like hours but was probably only 20 minutes. My lungs burned, my legs screamed, but I kept the family moving. Klaus was crying now, his small voice lost in the chaos. Finally, we broke through the tree line into a clearing. A narrow road cut through the landscape, and beyond it, a farmhouse. Smoke rose from its chimney. There. I pointed. That might be. A bullet struck the ground at my feet. I spun around. 3 SS soldiers emerged from the forest, rifles raised. The officer from the Kübelwagen walked between them, his pistol aimed directly at Anna. Bleiben Sie stehen, oder ich erschieße die Frau, he said coldly. Stop, or I shoot the woman. I raised my hand slowly, my mind racing. The farmhouse was 100 meters away. Too far to run. My pistol was tucked in my waistband, but if I drew it, Anna was dead. Bit, Anna begged, tears streaming down her face. Mean Kinder. My children. The officer smiled. It was the cruelest thing I'd ever seen. Your husband was a traitor, he said in perfect English, clearly enjoying her terror. And traitors' families share their fate. You should have. The gunshot echoed across the clearing. But it didn't come from the SS officer. It came from the farmhouse. The officer staggered, a red bloom spreading across his chest. He looked down in shock, then collapsed. The 3 soldiers spun around, confused, and that's when more shots rang out. 2 dropped immediately. The 3rd raised his rifle, but I'd already drawn my pistol and fired 3 times. He fell. Vite! Courez! A voice shouted from the farmhouse. Hurry! Run! We ran. The man who met us at the door was in his 50s, with a weathered face and piercing blue eyes. He held a British Lee Enfield rifle, still smoking. Henri Moreau? I gasped. Oui. He smiled grimly. And you must be the crazy American Tom Harding told me about. Get inside. Quickly. We stumbled into the farmhouse. Henri barred the door and moved to the window, watching the forest. More will come, he said matter-of-factly. They always do. But I have friends nearby. We'll get you to the American lines by tonight. Anna collapsed into a chair, holding her children close. Johann was crying now, quietly. Greta clutched her doll. Klaus had fallen asleep against his mother's chest. I sat down heavily, my hands still shaking from adrenaline. Eleanor Ashford, I said to Henri. Did you know her? His expression softened. Oui. She was brave. Too brave, perhaps. He looked at Anna. She spoke of you often. She said she made you a promise. Anna nodded, tears falling silently. Then today, Henri said quietly, that promise is kept. 3 weeks later. I was back with my unit when I heard the news. Germany had surrendered. May 8, 1945. The war in Europe was over. We'd done it. I never saw Anna Weber or her children again after that day. Henri Moreau got them across the line safely. I heard through Captain Harding that they'd been relocated to a displaced persons camp near Brussels and eventually made it to England, where Anna had distant relatives. Eleanor Ashford was posthumously awarded the George Cross for bravery. I attended the ceremony when the British held it at headquarters. They gave her medal to her younger sister, a quiet woman named Catherine who looked just like her. I wanted to tell Catherine what her sister's letter had done, how it had saved 4 lives, how it had changed mine, but the words wouldn't come. So I just saluted, and she nodded, and that was enough. I'm writing this from Cleveland now. It's 1953. 8 years since the war ended. I'm married, her name is Helen, and we have a daughter named Eleanor. Helen thinks I named her after my grandmother. But every time I look at my daughter, I think about that letter in the burned trench. I think about Lieutenant Eleanor Ashford, who died keeping a promise. I think about Anna Weber and her children, who lived because of it. And I think about the choice I made, to risk everything for strangers I'd never met. Some people say war makes you hard. Turns you into something less than human. But that letter proved the opposite. It proved that even in hell, even when death is all around you, even when the world is burning, promises still matter. Humanity still matters. And sometimes, one person's courage can echo across time and save lives they'll never see. That's what Eleanor Ashford taught me. That's what I found in that burned trench. And that's what changed everything.